Hey guys, Luke here, and this is the very first video I'm doing on FIFA 16. Obviously, as you can tell by the title, little intro and that sort of stuff, I am doing a Swansea City Career Mode. Now, this is going to be what I would consider a pretty realistic sort of one. Now, at the time of recording these sort of games, I hadn't touched FIFA at all, so going through all these squad reports and that sort of stuff, obviously I'm going to be doing that because I've played all the other FIFAs, but I haven't actually played any games or anything, and we're jumping straight into Legendary, as you saw by just the status of creating my save and that sort of stuff. So, I'm a pretty experienced FIFA player, and I'd say I'm pretty decent, pretty decent at it. So, the reason for going for Legendary is just I want a challenge. Obviously, world class would be good, but I think it looks stupid when YouTubers they end up, picking a relegation side, end up, getting top 4 first season. It's like, come on, using like 70 rated players as if, and then obviously same goes for people who are using teams like Swansea, who are, they're a pretty decent side. They're not a top 4 side, maybe Europa League side at best, but they're sort of in and about. That they're a pretty solid side, but it looked pretty stupid for me to go ahead and get win the Premiership, win the Premier League, the first season. So didn't want to be doing that, and I want a bit of a challenge. And if we have a struggling season, we have a struggling season. It means we've got something to work on in terms of what our side is. We got a pretty solid side. Players who I really want to work on, and I know this training, it's all new to me, so apologies if I'm not doing the right sort of stuff, but I've recorded the whole first season. It's going to be post-com, so that's what it is for now. But I'm not really sold on what our first team should be, what formation we should use. It's just a matter of experimenting, and I'm really glad they've got these Champions trophies and that sort of stuff for the preseason. A comp gives us more of a transfer budget, as well as lets us feel around playing some proper matches, and it gives me a reason to put out a full strength side. Obviously, I probably would have done it regardless of the friendlies. I know a lot of people don't usually play the friendlies on other FIFAs. Like, now that they've got an incentive to do it, they do it. But I think it's also died off very, very quickly. But for me, I always played the friendlies just so I could work out the kinks in the side, work out who's a good fit for the side, who's not. Especially for the Swansea side, they're not like a good side in terms of, a stereotypical FIFA sort of side. I mean, they have got some decent pace, like Montero is pretty fast, but, the rest of the side, they haven't really got super fast wingers. They haven't got, really, really fast forwards or, backs or anything. Like, they've got a pretty slow side in a FIFA sense. I know speed is, nerfed massively in this game, which makes it even worse for, playing this side, because they're so slow, and, passing is very, very weird to get used to. But see here, we're going to start off pretty well. With the very first game that we played was against River Plate, I think it was, from Argentina. I know the team, I just don't know if that's exactly their name. River Plate, I think it is that. But we scored a goal with our left back, and that was his first game for us. He's signed for Swansea in real life. I didn't know who he was. And some of these players I'm just not going to be aware of, just due to the fact that, I watch the Premier League, but because I'm from Australia, just the timing that it's on, it's really hard to keep updated with everything that's going on in the Premier League and, the footballing world. So, yeah, apologies if I get some people's names wrong and that sort of stuff. In terms of going over transfers in this series, I think it's a little bit stupid. Or I don't feel like I need to show every single time I make an inquiry for a player or put in an offer, because a lot of times it leads nowhere. And I think I only want to show the sort of key transfers and that sort of stuff, or the key offers that I'm making for players that actually lead to something. Now, Michu showed we got some offers for him from Tottenham, and the reason being is I put him up for transfer list. He's quite slow. I don't really want to use him as a striker because he doesn't have enough speed. He's not particularly tall or anything. Like, at least with Gomez, he's tall. Same goes for Eder or Eder, whatever his name is. They've at least got, like, Eder's got a bit of speed as well as some height, so he's got that going for him. And I mean, even those two aren't the ideal strikers that I'd like. I'd rather have a pacey sort of striker. That's just how I am, and I don't feel like crossing is something that is like really, really good in this game. And we don't really have anybody on the wings who can launch in those really, really good crosses. We don't really have any superstar crosses, so there's no really point of me employing that tactic. I mean, we've recorded Nathan Dyer, who was on loan. I forget who he's actually with, Leicester or someone, I think it was. So that cost us a little bit, and he's on pretty high wages compared to everyone else. You see John Joe Shelby, who's someone who I want to build a team around. I really like John Joe Shelby. I'm a Liverpool supporter in real life, and he obviously came through the ranks at Liverpool, and really loved John Joe Shelby. And I was a bit disappointed when we sold him, but I mean, it sort of worked out for the better. I think the player he is now, he wouldn't have been what he is. Had he stayed at Liverpool, he probably would have been an okay player, but only an okay player at best maybe. But he's turned into a pretty solid regular sort of player, and he's on the fringes of England, so that's good for him. And there's someone I definitely want to have in our side for this whole Swansea career if we can. There's other players like Sigurdsson as well, who's quite good, and Key is someone who's pretty decent. I'd love to use him. I just don't know whether to go with those three as a whole, or do I look to rotate them and play like with two up front or whatever. Right at this stage, I think we're playing with the one striker, and Amichu's actually been coming on, and surprisingly was actually pretty decent, although it still hasn't changed my mind enough to say we're going to keep him. Now in terms of strikers, you can see here the first player we're looking at is Angel Correa, I think is his name, and I think he'll be a great signing for us, whether we get him on loan or buy him outright. We do have a pretty good transfer budget. I noticed all Premier League sides have a pretty decent budget. So here we're getting offers for Michu, and we're getting a little bit, asking a little bit too much. I can't even think of the word to do it for it properly, but just asking for too much, and I'm not really sure if these teams will balk on it. You see Spurs have balked on it, so you'd assume the other side will as well. And what we did with the Correa one is we're taking advantage of this 2-year loan, and initially you saw me but we made an inquiry to see how much they wanted. They wanted 15 million, and I thought, well, when they say they want 15 million, always get them for way less, whether it's a few million, depending on what their original asking price is. But when they want 15 million, you usually get down to a pretty decent price, and I find for these loan offer to buyers, they'll take even less. So with these 2-year loan offer to buyers, I think that's perfect for us. With Correa, he's sort of on the fringes of becoming an 80 rated player, so he's near and abouts there. He's not really needed at Atletico Madrid. Obviously they got Vieto and a few other players. I think Mandzukic, maybe, I can't remember if he plays there. Jackson Martinez I think is there as well. They've got a lot of good players in that strike position, so he's a fair way down in the pecking order, as well as if he turns pretty good and just doesn't want to come to us, well, we've had 2 good seasons with him. If he does eventually want to come to us, we've only got to pay 10 million for him, and he should be, I'd say, well and truly in the 80s by the time he's going to be coming to us. So wouldn't be surprised if he's in the well and truly in the 80s by the end of this first season. But you can see here we haven't got him yet, and we're still working through our side using Ida and Gomes. And at this stage, I'll have to say Gomes, I think I said it earlier, I'm not really sold on him, to be honest. I don't feel like he fits the side. I don't know. But at the same time, there's some moments where I use him and think, oh, okay, now I get it. I get him. I get why you can use him. And then, like, straight away, I'll get, through and go and get chased down or something. And then I think, no, need to get rid of him. But at the same time, I don't want to go and raid the side. There's nothing I hate more in career modes where people will go and sell off half their side as soon as they start it. Because it just doesn't happen. Now, we are selling a few players, but we're keeping the core of the side. A lot of them are just sort of fringe players and that sort of stuff. And I think it'd be stupid if Gomes, who's had a great season he's been great since he moved to Swansea, and a few of these other guys get sold off straight away. Just be dumb. Now you can see here prize money. We've actually had we've been undefeated so far in the Champions Cup here. And one thing I haven't talked about is the training, and a lot of people will go and train some of the youngsters, and I feel like, why waste my time training the youngsters who are going to grow by themselves anyways, where I can train people like Jonjo Shelvey and Sigurdsson, who are near and about. They're going to be in the first team playing. I'm actually going to be using them. I feel like I'd be better off training them. I don't know exactly if that's does much for the training. Maybe people, once they're a certain age, they don't really go very well in the training. It doesn't really change much, but from what I've seen, it still works pretty well. And Jonjo Shelvey grows a fair bit, as well as Sigurdsson and Key and a whole bunch of players. And also, one thing I should note is the centre back Fernandez, I think is his name. I don't really know what to think of him. In the few games I've used of him, wasn't a huge fan. His speed, I'm not like a huge person in like the centre backs need to have like 90 pace or anything, but I mean he's in the low 50s, which is it's just a little bit too slow. A 60s is like a minimum for me. I'm not saying all the time. Maybe if he was just like a backup, be fine. But for what he's like worth, if we can sell him, we can bring in someone better, in my opinion. But for right now, we're using Jordy and Matt at centre back. And right here, this is the first proper game that we're going to be doing. A lot of all the other games in the group, I was sort of just putting random, like not random highlights, but just showing pretty much the goals and any sort of other, interesting sort of highlights. Where this time I'm going to be doing as if it was like a proper episode, because it's not a final, but it's our first sort of finals game for this Champions Trophy. And winning this is not a huge sort of thing, but at the same time it is, because it'll allow us to bring in some more players, get more transfer in. And I see a lot of YouTubers playing with some of the bigger sides thinking, yeah, don't really want to play this, I'll just simulate all this sort of stuff. And I think, they're like, if we get to the final, I'll play the final. Or I feel as I need to play for these sort of games first off to sort of get me in a little bit of form going into the main season, as well as actually ensuring that we have a chance of winning. So I feel if I just simulated this, we'll get destroyed by Porto. Not that we're doing too much better in terms of me actually playing, but yeah, I just thought it was worth mentioning. I think in terms of our defense is okay. Norton doesn't have a lot of pace and just isn't particularly good on the ball, and that's what I found on this game. You need to have people who are pretty good on the ball and have pretty decent passing. Like, I found the ratings actually mean a lot more in this game. A lot of the times you could just pick the fastest player. It doesn't matter if they're 70, 60 or 8 or whatever. If they had 90 pace or whatever, you could use them pretty well. Whereas I feel now you want to go using those plays where you're going to suffer for it. They're not going to pass very well, and I'm really liking that. But at the same time, it is quite frustrating after playing other games. Now, Jack Cork, someone who I'm a little bit torn on. I don't really have a spot for him in the side, but I feel like if I sell him, there'll be a time where I'm like, man, I need a CDM here. And also at the same time, we can get decent money for him, but that means we need to look for a backup, or we need to look for a replacement for him, and I'm just not willing to do that at this stage. I just can't be bothered. Now, the strike position, obviously we looked at Courier. We're bringing him in on loan with a 10 million option to buy. And I was looking at other players as well in terms of maybe thinking about getting rid of Gomez and Eder, or just getting rid of Gomez and having more backup. But you can see here, Courier, we're about to accept him, and at the time for those other two offers, we hadn't actually had Courier accepted, but I was under the impression that we're going to bring him in, so it's not like it wasn't a surprise or anything. But see here, Gabriel, we put in a bid of 6.5. They wanted 8.5 initially. We went for 4.5. They rejected that, which you saw earlier. But we did put another offer in for the Santos striker, and the reason being, I've seen this guy on Football Manager and all these other ones, and he always looks like a good player. Now, people in the comments, I'm not interested in looking at, like, sign this guy because he's got a potential of 90. I'm not interested at all in that sort of stuff. I really don't want the game ruined for me by going off potentials, because I just think going off people's potentials and talking about potential all the time in terms of like, well, they're supposed to be an 85, it just ruins the experience for me. I'd rather try and figure things out myself and that sort of stuff. But feel free to leave suggestions on who to sign and who to keep and that sort of stuff. But the final thing that we did in this episode was sign Gabriel, which I think is a good sign. So now we've got two backup strikers. We've got two people who are pacey if we want to go for a more pacey side, and we also got options if we want to go for a bit of a target man. So we've got just more variations of the lineup that we can use. Anyways, that's where this video is going to end. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter at MrLukeMYT, Facebook page in the description below, and I'll see you for next time. Bye.